What's up, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Jake Fletcher Show. Coming to you guys from a new location here. I have a new apartment right now, and I am very excited to be here. The room is not sound treated yet, so it might have a little bit of a reverbiness to it. We'll see what we can do about that in post-production if it's bad, but I'm excited to be coming to you guys with a new episode. And I wanted to talk today about something that is very relatable, I'm sure, to many people, and that is involving quarantine. So this is kind of a quarantine and coronavirus episode, more so the quarantine aspect, and just basically how I've dealt with it in terms of what I've done wrong, what I've done right, and lessons that I've learned from it so far. So this episode is essentially about the biggest mistakes that I've made so far in this quarantine. And once I outline what those mistakes were and are, I'm going to talk about what I did to mitigate those, correct those, and what I've done correctly as well. So going to pull out the silver linings and not just focus on the bad, but focus on the good. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I know a lot of people are going through something very similar right now as far as trying to figure out how to cope with all of this that's going on, how it affects us personally, how it affects our family life, relationships, our business, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you're going from maybe working in an office or working in a different environment and setting to working now at home almost exclusively. For me personally, I'm a realtor, so there's also a decent amount of going out and showing properties and interacting with people, but there has also been a influx of more virtual showings and doing things a little bit differently than what we normally would do. So I want to highlight the number one thing that I did wrong. We'll just jump right into it here. So the absolute biggest thing that I did wrong when all this first started, and to some degree, I'm still working to mitigate this now because honestly, this is a tough situation, right? There's no necessarily, there's really no precedent in modern times for what's happening. And there's no guidebook or path for us to follow as business people, as entrepreneurs, or as people in general. So if you're somebody who's always striving to do better and achieve more and become better, listen up because this is definitely for you. So the number one thing that I did wrong when this quarantine first started and am still working to get better at is I got off of my routine. Okay, so since I took the leap into real estate, even before I got my license, I began to make my life more regimented. So in terms of waking up early and going to bed earlier, and also having a morning routine. So waking up and doing a certain set, order of things each morning between meditating and stretching, working out, running, and then writing. The big one is writing my schedule out for the day. So these things were instrumental for me in the beginning of my real estate career and continue to be instrumental for me today. So of all those things, probably the most non-negotiable to me in terms of my morning routine is stretching. I just feel like I always will have a better day when I've stretched than if I don't stretch. But for about the first month of quarantine, which here in the US started mid-March, I really was unsure, just like everyone else, what was going to happen, how my business was going to be impacted, and what reality was going to look like for myself and for the real estate industry going forward. Now, due to that lack of sureness of being able to have any kind of foresight, because there's no precedent for this, I started to learn a different skill set because I thought, well, man, what if real estate just tanks and nobody's able to buy homes and there's just nothing happening in real estate. I need to learn how to make money online. So I started to learn how to trade Forex, which was, I knew was going to be complicated. As the more I learned about it, the more, not daunting, but the more I realized that it was even more complicated than I thought. So I started to learn Forex, and it was, like I said, just a way to mitigate any potential financial loss or slowness from the real estate industry. So about a month into the quarantine, it was a couple weeks, about 3 weeks in, is when I decided, okay, I'm going to start learning this other skill. A few weeks after that, things really started to heat up with real estate again. The market, as far as buyers go, was really picking up again. And people were kind of coming out of their shelters, and I was busier than I had ever been, which is awesome. And I attribute that partially to the fact that probably some people were hiding under their beds and not wanting to work. So the people who were still working were getting a lot more clientele, I feel. So once I realized, okay, wow, I'm busier than I've ever been, I quickly shifted gears from that learning how to trade Forex back into full-time real estate. So, that was one shift in my routine, because normally my routine would be just doing real estate all day. And now all of a sudden I was doing real estate, but I was also learning a new skill at the same time. So, another thing that really shifted with my routine was my diet and my health. So before quarantine, I had been very strictly intermittent fasting. So I would have my breakfast at 12 o'clock noon. And just for context, I was waking up around 5:30 or 6 a.m. So I'd go pretty much half a day without a meal, which worked out really well. And then I would eat dinner around 7:30, 8 o'clock. So once quarantine started, everything was thrown out of whack, right? And I started to just not intermittent fast because I was home all the time and there was so many snacks around because that's what happens when you shop at Costco. And I actually gained the quarantine 5, as I'm dubbing it, and I'm still working that off. But the lesson is that, the diet suffered. I started eating, foods that were not as healthy for me. I was eating just whenever I was hungry. I was snacking a lot. And I was pretty much having a whiskey drink every night, which is not typical for me. And, I wasn't, not like I was having multiple drinks. I would have like one drink, maybe two, but it was pretty much every night. And that's not typical for me at all. So that was one thing that definitely changed about my routine, in addition to my schedule. And another thing that changed was the activities that I was doing on a daily basis. So as I mentioned, I was learning a new skill. I was still doing real estate, but I also had a lot more downtime where I was just kind of kicking back and relaxing, just hanging. Now, a lot of this time I did use wisely in terms of reading, in terms of educating myself, and also some other activities that I'll talk about in a second that were positive. But the main lesson there was that when my routine got thrown off, my daily activities were, of course, thrown off as a result. My diet was thrown off. My schedule was just totally thrown off. And as a result of all this, and of course, there being a global freaking pandemic, my mental health definitely was suffering as well from a result of all these things. And I'm sure that a lot of people can relate to that. So what I realized, though, kind of quickly on, maybe a month and a half, 2 months max into it, was that I needed to make a change and make drastic changes, multiple changes. So I started kind of slowly but surely working on that, working on my schedule, working on going to bed earlier, because I was going to bed very late, like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. And before I got into real estate, I was always kind of, late going to bed. And so that was kind of a natural thing for me to start going to bed later, but I started focusing on really trying to get to bed sooner, which is really a big key. It's a very important thing if you want to have some kind of routine, some kind of schedule, which allows you to benefit from that routineness. Then you have to have more regular sleeping hours, better defined and more regular. So I started looking at what time am I going to bed? What time do I need to be going to bed? What time do I need to be waking up? So the very basics, got back to the basics, right? Also, it was a little tougher in terms of my diet and exercise. That's something I'm still working on, definitely doing better. But now I'm in a new place, new surroundings, and it's easier to watch my diet because I'm not in a living situation where there's as many snacks and food around and stuff. So the big thing was for me, my schedule, writing down my schedule. So that's been a part of my morning routine for about 2 years now. And it's one of the most impactful things that I've ever implemented in my life, because what I do is I have, and I've talked about my morning routine before in other videos, but I wake up, right, brush my teeth, drink water, and then I meditate, do gratitudes, I stretch, and then I do some calisthenic exercises, and then I write down my schedule for the day. I actually time everything out and will have a regimented schedule for the day that allows me to never question what it is that I'm going to be doing at any moment in time. And I am able to focus better as a result of that. If it's not in my schedule, it doesn't exist. So that keeps me better focused and helps me get more done for sure. And after I do the writing of my schedule, then I'll go for a run, come back, shower. And at that point in time, it's usually about 8 o'clock in the morning, and it's time to get to business, get to real estate. So one of the big things that really pulled me out of this like rut, so to speak, was that I started, once I started getting back into my morning routine, was I started writing out my schedule again. And for some reason, man, that is just like a switch that flipped and allowed me to really start focusing again a little bit better, a lot better. And since I've started implementing that again, now it's also an easy thing to just continue doing as well, because it's really not hard to create a schedule for yourself for the day. The hard part is following the schedule. But that was definitely a big switch that got flipped and allowed me to get back on track a lot better. A couple months after the quarantine started. Now, a big part of something that I discovered when writing out my schedule that was new for me, that came about during the quarantine, that helped me to get to bed sooner and follow that as being a part of my schedule, was actually writing in when I go to bed. So I have it written in my schedule now, going to bed at X time and then waking up at X time. So when that became a part of my schedule, it became something that I was much more likely to follow. Now, I'm not perfect. I definitely don't always follow my schedule exactly. But the point is that it became more likely, it became more probable that I was going to follow that schedule, which is at the end of the day, ultimately what you want. You want to increase the likelihood that you're going to get positive results by increasing the frequency of positive actions. So at this point in time, right, we'll back it up a little bit to, kind of 2 months into the pandemic, right before I decided, dude, you got to, change some things up and start over, try again. At this point in time, my mental health was probably very similar to what a lot of people's was. I was feeling like, man, the world is crashing down. I feel super bummed out about the fact that, people are dying left and right. Doesn't seem like we're taking a very good approach to dealing with all of this. Nobody really knows exactly what's going on, and nobody knows when there's an end in sight, when things are going to get back to normal. And so I was just feeling really down, man. I was feeling really down. And I'm sure a lot of people feel like that. And the reason why I bring this up is because at a certain point, it kind of also clicked in my head as far as my mental health that it was okay to feel down. I accepted that, you know what? It's okay to be feeling like this right now. Probably a lot of people feel the same way. And I don't have to feel like this all the time. And I knew that getting back into my routine, getting back into exercising and everything was going to help me kickstart my mental health as well. Right. And one reason why I bring up all this mental health stuff is because I feel like it is a very kind of faux pas subject, or, a lot of people don't want to talk about it. It's not, it's not in vogue to talk about mental health, and it's becoming more and more acceptable in social, in society. But we all got to do our part to make it more acceptable to talk about mental health and talk about what we're going through, because at the end of the day, as incredible and professional as somebody might be, they're still a human being, right? Not saying I'm incredible or whatever, but just anyone. Take your biggest role model, Beyonce or whoever it is. At the end of the day, they're still a human being. They still have thoughts and emotions and feelings, and still feel down too. So no matter how well off or how, quote unquote perfect your life is, you still have moments that you're down, and it's okay to feel that way, and this is something that we probably know, but we don't recognize enough. We don't accept that reality as readily, but it really is okay to feel like that. What's not okay is to get stuck in the reciprocal uh, cycle of continually feeling down and feeling worse and worse. The longer you feel down, the more likely it is that you're going to keep feeling more down, right? So whenever you have some kind of negative emotion like that, or negative action too, for that matter, you have to overcome it by replacing it with something positive, in my opinion and in my experience. So that being said, when I was feeling down and feeling negative, I would basically replace that feeling with uh, analyzing what it was I was doing that was not right, and and figuring out what it was that I needed to do that was right, that would lead me towards the better direction. So that was, I think, was the turning point for me, and how I started to kind of turn things around. Was I realized, like, okay, it's okay to feel like this. You need to take steps. You need to take action to make things different. And that's when I started saying, okay, well, I'm going to get back on my schedule. I'm going to get back to writing my schedule. I'm going to get back to my diet. I'm going to get back to doing the activities that I know I need to do to advance myself as an individual and myself as a businessman. And I definitely can tell you it was a slow road at first. It was very slow, which I also realized is okay. You can't expect to flip on a dime and change everything overnight. But you have to be willing to be consistent. And that's the key, is the consistency, and really just diving in to do the tough work, and figure out exactly what it is that you need to do, why, and how you're going to do it. So that being said, right, I like I said, flipped the script when I decided to try to start getting back on my schedule, start getting back on my diet. And by no means am I at the finish line here. Definitely, especially, the diet thing is slower. Definitely eating better and back on my intermittent fasting, back on exercising more, and need to be more regular with that. But I just moved. It's a little hard to do that when you just move, because you got a lot of moving things and settling in. And then our cat was wigging out because he was in a new place, so he wouldn't let us sleep. But definitely getting those things ironed out and feeling better as a result, which is great. Doing things that make me happy, working on music at night, having that little me time, having fun, talking to my friends, Zooming with my friends, and just seeing people, catching up with my friends and stuff like that. Find those things that make you feel good and make sure that you get them in. You have to schedule some you time in order to make those drastic changes and not kind of lose your mind, because we're not robots, right? So now I'll talk a little bit about things that I did right. Okay. So of course, as I alluded to, the main thing that I started doing right was trying to get back on my schedule. And the big flipped switch was writing that schedule down. Another thing too is that, I want to touch on it briefly, is when the pandemic first started happening and everything went into lockdown, quarantine, stay-at-home orders, one of my first instincts was, okay, well, if real estate crashes and nobody's buying any homes, I'm still going to be in real estate because I love real estate, but I need to learn an additional new skill, right? Like I said, and then I started learning Forex. Now, that is, in my opinion, the right mindset to have, because it's adaptability. If you're not willing to be flexible and adapt to new circumstances, then you're going to get swept under the rug. You're going to get swept into the dustbin of history. And so that was the right mindset, right mentality, I think, to have at the time. Equally as correct was once I realized, oh my gosh, I'm busier than I've ever been. Things are picking up and there's all these buyers in the market. Prices are being held stable because there's a lack of inventory. I decided, okay, pause the whole Forex thing and I'm going to focus on real estate 110% of my time again. So it's funny because there was like a 3-week, maybe 3-4 week gap where real estate was like, 90% of my day. And then I spent like an hour or two a day learning the Forex stuff. But then I just dropped it cold turkey and went right back into 100% real estate nonstop. And that was a great decision. So that was definitely a right move to make. So it became apparent that it wasn't necessary anymore. And as soon as I realized that, boom, cut it out and back to focusing on my main objective. Right now, the reason I think that it's a good idea to, in addition to being flexible and adapting to new circumstances, is it's important, in my opinion, to have multiple streams of income, right? I am still in the, grand scheme of things in the earlier portion of my real estate career. So I'm still really focusing on building that business. I'm starting to work on other things on the side that are going to become other forms of other streams of revenue in the future. So, this YouTube channel is definitely one that I intend on monetizing once I'm able to, and my podcasts. In addition to, I'm starting a media group where I'm going to be providing for realtors, basically Matterport, 3D video scanning and stuff like that, media services to help them market their properties. And the Forex is definitely another stream of revenue that I would like to implement in the future, but you have to be aware of where you're at in your career. You can't do a million things at once. You really are best served to focus on doing one thing at a time until it's more or less able to be automated, or at least to some large degree be automated. And then you're able to divest some time into other things to build those revenue streams. Because at the end of the day, if you only have, we'll just say if you have all your eggs in one basket, then you're susceptible to some kind of pandemic coming along and knocking your business out, right? So it's important to have those multiple streams of revenue, but it's also important to know when is a good time to pursue those alternate forms of revenue. You have to be strategic about it. Another thing that I definitely feel that I did correctly during the pandemic, and this also overlapped with that first, this was right away, right as soon as the lockdown happened, I took it upon myself to spend more time focusing on improving myself and improving my business. So improving myself in terms of learning, educating myself more, reading more, and improving my business in terms of working on my business systems to basically make my business more efficient and to expand my business. So building the back end of my business to better serve my clients and myself, and the ultimate goal of being successful. So some ways that I was doing that was, for example, working on my preferred vendors list, which is essentially a list of people that I've worked with, people that I know in all different industries that could potentially be beneficial to my clients. So for example, if I have clients that are in need of a marketing firm, then I have my list of the different marketing firms that I personally know, people who own them or that I've worked with them, etc. People that I've worked with that I can recommend to my clients to just give extra value to my clients and really link people up to do great things, which is something that I've really enjoyed in the past, even before I was in real estate, was linking up people, even if what it is that they're doing is outside of me and my purveyance and what I'm doing, maybe even especially when they're outside of, because it seems to be more frequent that I will link two individuals or entities up, and what it is that they're doing really has nothing to do with me. I'm just kind of the matchmaker. So I really enjoy that kind of thing. I really, I feel like it's a very important role to be able to play if you can. If you can link someone up with someone that helps them with stuff in their life and in their business to a large degree, then, you're creating good karma for yourself, goodwill for those other people. And you're, at the end of the day, in terms of a business standpoint, it also elevates you in their mind and in their perspective, right? So it's just all around good. And of course, not to mention that it's helping them out to a large degree because you're able to refer someone to them that you know and that you trust and that is going to take care of them. So it's definitely an important thing to be able to do, I feel, as a realtor, because we want to be, as realtors, we want to be not just somebody who you go to buy and sell real estate. We want to be your person that you go to for everything. You need a wedding planner, I got you. You need somebody to clean the hull of your yacht, I got you. So you want to be the dot connector, essentially. Now, the last thing that I will say about what I did right was recognizing what I was doing wrong. So consequently, as I continued to mess up and do things that weren't serving me, I eventually realized, hey man, these things aren't serving me, and realized that, having that self-awareness, I realized that I needed to change those things. That's probably one of the most important things that you can do as a person if you're wanting to grow, if you're looking to expand yourself as an individual, and expand your business, expand your life, everything, every direction, all directions, 360 degrees simultaneously. You have to strive for a great deal of self-awareness and self-critique, but to a level that it's not destructive. You want to be honest with yourself, and to a certain degree, you want to be hard on yourself. You want to be your worst critic, but you also want to be your own biggest fan. You want to maintain that balance of holding yourself accountable, but not beating yourself up, right? And it's a delicate balance. It's a fine line to walk. Personally, I feel like I've gotten better at it, but I used to be very bad at kind of beating myself up all the time. And in my head, I was never good enough for myself. And that was honestly a pretty tough lesson to learn that I didn't learn until later on in life. But, it's very important because, you may be surrounded by people who are honest with you enough to be like, hey man, you're screwing up, X, Y, and Z. And that's great. Those are great friends, people who are that honest with you. But you might be surrounded more with like yes men and women, yes people who are just along for the ride and whatever is clever and not really holding you accountable. And this is probably because they don't hold themselves accountable and don't have very high standards. So, definitely watch out for being around people like that too much. But at the same time, you want to have your own standards to where it doesn't matter who you're around. You're going to hold yourself to a high standard, and you're going to hold yourself accountable and recognize when you're messing up, what you're doing to mess up, and how you're going to fix it. Because at the end of the day, it's very easy to fall into this quicksand where we start doing one or two things wrong, and then as a result, a couple other areas of our life slip, and then as a result of those few things, some other things start to slip, and the next thing you know, a year has passed by, you've gained 20 or 30 pounds, you've messed up all these relationships, you've lost out on all kinds of business, and you're just generally in a much worse place than you were before. So instead of going down that path, you want to be very honest with yourself, which I've talked about many times. And you want to not just be honest with yourself and hold yourself accountable, but even more, maybe not even more, but equally as important to that is once you have been honest with yourself and held yourself accountable, identified the things that you need to do and change, you need to actually take the action, take the steps to do those things, to change those things, because otherwise it's just a dialogue in your head that's completely void of any meaning if you don't take those steps, if you don't do those things differently, if you're not self-aware and self-critical enough to say, hey, you're doing X, Y, and Z wrong, and you know that you're supposed to do A, B, and C to counteract it, but you're not doing it, and hold yourself accountable in the moment to actually follow through with those actions. Now this is the difficult part. That's the execution, right? And the execution is always the tough part. Planning is easy. Make a plan for anything. And it's important to have a detailed plan. It's important to have not only a detailed plan, but the vision of how it is that you're going to enact that plan, how you're going to take the steps to get to the next step in that plan, right? But equally important is that you actually take that action, right? Because you can read all the books you want, watch all the YouTube videos and educational stuff that you want, self-help, et cetera, but until you actually take the hard steps of taking action, it's not going to happen. There's nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to change until you actually do. Okay. So keep that in mind and keep that at the forefront of your daily, your daily activities, your daily schedule, those things that you know that you need to do, right? Do them, just do them. Right. And figure out some ways that motivate you, encourage you to do things when you don't want to do them, right? Because we tend to be very creative with how we can make excuses for stuff, but we need to be even better at not making those excuses and be even better at holding ourselves accountable to actually just do the action, right? So that's pretty much, I feel like, enough said about that. Let me know, reach out in the comments or send me a message, DM or whatever. Let me know what you're feeling right now in this quarantine as we're entering into month 4.5 so far. We're about to enter into month 5 in the United States. Doesn't really seem like we're in for, the numbers are going the wrong way basically. So let me know how you guys are feeling, man. I mean, my mental health has definitely been ups and downs. I feel like it's been mostly ups. The downs were more at the beginning, and then I had to reset, strengthen myself mentally, and get to where I am now, where I feel like I've gone through enough in my life, mental health wise, that I'm solid. I'm a stalwart of mental health. Of course, I don't always have I'm not always a 100%. I don't even know if I've ever fully been at 100%. There's always something, right? But it's normal, it's natural, it's okay. But I feel like now I'm at a point where unless I caught COVID or something like that, God forbid, and I hope none of you do either, but unless something cataclysmic happened in my life, I feel like I'm moving. I'm on the tracks now. The train is moving, if not full steam ahead, pretty close to it. And I'm feeling good. And I hope that this message helps some of you to flip that switch, flip the script, change it up, right? Realize that every moment of every day is a new opportunity. Every day you wake up every morning is a new opportunity to flip that switch and start over, right? If that's what you need. So take it upon yourself to do that tough work, to hold yourself accountable, to outline the steps of action that you need to take, and then do it, right? Take that action. So that's it. It's a short one here for the Jake Fletcher Show this week. And I hope everybody out there is feeling good, feeling healthy, and or on the path to feeling better and feeling more healthy. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Sell smart, buy bold. Jake Fletcher Show out. Peace.